Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today with the title Vocabularies as a Service. Why vocabulary management based on SKOS standard should be a cornerstone of your information strategy. My name is Kaltenböck of Semantic Web Company, managing located in Vienna in Austria, and I'm very happy to present a very interesting webinar to you today this afternoon. So we have three very interesting speakers in place. At the beginning, I will hand over to Antoine Isaac. Antoine is R&D manager at Europeana, has a PhD in computer science from University Paris-Sorbonne, is doing a lot of work in W3C, Worldwide Web Consortium groups, notably for SKOS and library linked data. And he is also a guest researcher at the Web and Media Group University in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. He will give us an overview about SKOS. You see the slides already on the screen. The second afterwards will be Jan. Jan Voskuil is the CEO of Taxonic, a consultancy agency located in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and he will give us a presentation about SKOS administration, also with a focus explaining that SKOS now is an official and obligatory standard in the Netherlands regarding classification and metadata management. And finally, my colleague Andreas Blumauer, of the Semantic Web Company and the product owner of the pool party Semantic Suite, and thereby has a long time track record on subjects, and myself, we will explain and give a little bit an overview over projects, use cases on top of SKOS, and why it is so important, or what can be done, how powerful SKOS is, and how it can create value in data management. A few remarks regarding this webinar. You have a panel in front of you, and there you have a chat inside, because after the three talks we will open the floor for questions and we will answer you. So please feel free to use the chat to paste questions and place questions at any time you want to, and we will then pick these questions at the end in the Q&A session and answer these questions with a panel. And at the end, we will open the floor and open the microphones also to participants to speak out and discuss together with us. So thanks for the moment, and I will hand over to our first speaker for today. This is Antoine Isaac with the presentation about SKOS and overview.
Thanks a lot, Martin. So, hello everyone. Well, my name is Antoine Isaac. I work for Europeana, and the design of the slides that I'm using today. But today I'm going to present you a brief overview about SKOS, in which I have actually been involved since before my Europeana days. So that's actually since quite a while, but I will try to blend this overview with some material from the recent work Europeana and others have been doing. So, well, an overview would not start without a brief presentation of what we mean by these knowledge organization systems that SKOS is about. So SKOS started with the mandate of capturing information present in this knowledge organization system, and it's always been a bit of a trick to actually define that scope. So in the end, there is no fully defined remit for knowledge organization system, except that they cover things that are very well known as classification systems, thesauri, subject heading lists, gazetteers, etc. So all things that are basically grouping concepts as a unit of thought, providing this concept with labels and organizing these concepts together. And we have here a couple of examples on these slides with a classification of musical instruments. So that's the MIMO part on the screen, and that's a concept that represents a harpsichord. And you can see, well, basically the labels that are associated to these harpsichords, cembalo in German or Swedish, clavecin in French, and so on. On the right part of the screen, we've got an extract of the architecture thesaurus from the Getty Research Institute. and with the concept of hourglasses. And you can see here label information, such as for the music instrument case. So we have hourglasses in English, uurglazen in Dutch, reloj de las horas in Spanish. But we also have some hierarchical information positioning the concept of hourglass in a more general context of other concepts in the art and architecture domain. So we know that hourglass is a more specific concept than sunglasses, which is itself a more specific concept than timepieces, and so on. And we have these networks of relationships that can be very useful for many application scenarios, and I will present a bit more about it later on. And actually, I believe the other presentation to tell you about the value of these knowledge organization systems. So SKOS was meant to capture these things. So it's for exchanging knowledge organization system as linked data using the RDF model. So the basic mandate was to do better at knowledge exchange than just semi-structured data, for example, using CSV, but still being relatively simple. So if we go through an example of a SKOS RDF graph, it may look like the example on these slides. So I've put on the top left a sort of mini thesaurus presenting concepts like animal, cats, domestic cats, and wild cats. And we can see on the center of the screen how these things are represented in SKOS. So starting actually with the cats on the left, we can see that this concept has a preferred label in English, which is unsurprisingly cats. There is another label for it, which is represented as alternative label. That's the SKOS alt label arrow in my example, and that label is domestic cats. There is also some kind of note here, specifically a scope note that says that the concept should be used only for domestic cats and not for other kind of animals such as wild cats, which are represented using their own concepts, which is the one on the right. And well, this wild cat concept has a preferred label. And both the cats and the wild cats are related using a rather generic kind of relation, which SKOS defined as SKOS related. There is another less generic relation, which is the broader relationship, which actually serves to indicate that some concepts are more specific than others. And in the case of our toy thesaurus, cats is defined as a narrower concept to animals. So there is a broader arrow from cats to animals. So that's basically the sort of data that SKOS allows to represent. And because in this overview, I mean, I felt the need to somehow contrast it with other knowledge representation languages, and a very well-known one is the Ontology web language from the Semantic Web technology stack. And that is meant for representing formal semantics. And quite often there is a bit of confusion between SKOS and these other knowledge representation models. So all the Ontology web language is used for ontologies that enable machine reasoning. It's really meant for representing the structure of the data. So it will say things like mother is a class of things, parent is the class of entities of type person that are related to at least another resource of type person using the child property, and so on. And these things can be used in formal axioms to infer some new data from existing one, or to validate existing data. But SKOS is really not about this. SKOS is for simple knowledge organization system, and it tries to refrain from adding that sort of knowledge on top of the existing thesauri, classification systems, and so on. So we can represent a knowledge organization system as formal ontology. It is theoretically possible, but the problem is that thesauri, classification system, subject links are very large. They often have soft semantics, so we only would know that a parent notion is related to child and nothing more. Moreover, they also have a focus on terminological information, like synonym between child and offspring. So that's really a different kind of knowledge. But still, these software semantics, they can be useful for many applications. And in the coming slides, I wanted to tell you a bit how we use SKOS in Europeana. So for those among you who do not know much about us, Europeana is meant to be a platform to access European culture. So we're gathering digital representation of cultural objects everywhere in Europe, so currently at 44 million objects. I won't tell you much about the detail, but roughly we're getting information about these objects and we provide access to it. And the idea is that we try to use knowledge organization system as a sort of semantic layer, a semantic network on top of cultural heritage object. So rather than letting the user facing all the variety of objects, we wanted to present them with concept and try to mediate the access using some richer, some more semantic data than just the metadata available for the objects in the start. And for this, we've turned to technology like linked open data, trying to see how we could benefit from it. So, well, here's a link to a video I will not play, but you can go to the URL and play it if you want a brief introduction on linked open data and how it can be useful for culture in general. Here, I'm going to insist today on the benefits of using contextual resources for, well, basic things like presenting user with a rich or fueling multilingual search and display. And I've put on this slide a screenshot of our portal that presents a device that comes from a collection, a cultural collection in Leuven in Belgium. And as you can see, this device, which is actually a sort of projector, is described in Dutch. So that means that in normal access systems, this object can be mostly found using Dutch queries. The thing is that in the type part of the screen, so rather below, you can see some English labels there. Projectors, projector, magic lanterns, etc. And the trick is that this thing was not, these English labels were not part of the original metadata. Instead, what we got from the museum is a bit of SKOS data that says that the type of the object is not really the string toverlantaarns in Dutch, but that's actually a fully fledged concept that comes from the art and architecture thesaurus that I mentioned earlier. And that concept comes as a link to us. And that's the red URL that you see on this slide. And when Europeana gets the metadata about the object, we can actually go to the web and fetch the data for this concept URL and get the labels in different languages. And that allows us to make some basic translation about the metadata and to use that in the display and in the search and to allow better access to the object. So that's a rather scenario, but that's one that helps quite a lot. And we have a series of these vocabularies which are currently provided to Europeana by our partners, so museum, archives, libraries. Many of these institutions, they use knowledge organization system. And what happens is that together we can work on publishing these things as linked open data and harvesting them and exploiting them in systems for richer search and display. And actually by ourselves, we also do a bit of automatic enrichment. So when we get objects that are not described using a SKOS vocabulary already, we can try to enrich it by ourselves. So creating a link from the object to a vocabulary of our choice automatically and use this link to enrich the data when it was not enriched from the start. So here on this screen, you can see a little bird object coming from France. And you can see the type which is appearing in English, and that's coming from the automatic enrichment we made, which is shown in the part of the screen below at the bottom, which shows that we've linked the object to a concept coming from a thesaurus that has all these many languages. So actually, this object that you see can also be retrieved by a query in Chinese or Arabic if we so want it. So that's it for simple cases. As part of an overview, I thought it could be useful to give you some pointers to things that are a bit more complex. So SKOS stands for simple, but actually there are things that go a bit beyond just assigning concept with simple labels and relationship. There is one very interesting feature in SKOS, which is the possibility to network all these knowledge organization systems together. So if we have two vocabularies, two little thesauri here, such as, well, I've used again my animal example. If we have two vocabularies coming from two different places, it is possible to create links between them, and for a client, a machine client, to actually browse through these links as if it was in one unique vocabulary, and that allows to actually bridge the gap between different information environments. There are also some proposals around to represent more precise relationship for formal semantics and doing a bit of query expansion of data validation. So actually specializing the basic relationship in SKOS, or to allow some more complex concepts to be represented. So for example, in libraries there are concepts that are being combined from simple concepts, so such as here on the screen, we've got, coming from the Library of Congress subject heading, the concept of the Civil War in the United States considered from an historical perspective. And that thing is made of three pre-existing concepts, namely United States, history, and Civil War. And they are bundled together, and that can actually allow some more finer application scenarios. So these things can be useful, but again, the core models are key. So SKOS is really about what most people will start using, where most of the interoperability benefits lie. And to be able to use this simple data in application scenarios, such as the one that I've shown for Europeana, but we're really not the only one to use it. And typically, well, the application scenarios will be searching and browsing, so creating like more complex interfaces to categorize search results, or to provide pages about concepts or about persons that will help the users to orient themselves in more complex information environments. There is also the capability of making richer, more semantic description or annotation, such as this example coming from a project related to Europeana, in which users can actually annotate parts of pictures using concepts coming from their specific preferred vocabularies. And finally, a number of vocabulary services have emerged that provide an access to data that is published as SKOS. And I really wanted to show this example coming from Australia, where they gathered a number of vocabularies that make sense for researchers or mostly coming from digital humanities. So the vocabularies are accessible in this portal that they've deployed. And an interesting thing is that these vocabularies, they can be edited via the portal, and that is made thanks to plugging the pool party editor that is going to be presented in the following presentations. And there is seamless data exchange from the vocabulary portal to the pool party editor that can edit these vocabularies on the portal. And that really is made thanks to the fact that SKOS is a simple standard and allows really the data to flow seamlessly between different tools that use it. So that's basically it. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm going to stay around if you have any questions at the end of this webinar.
Thank you very much, Martin. Speaking again, Antoine, for this really great overview. I really liked and enjoyed it a lot. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I also think Europeana is a great example for using SKOS and what can be done with it. Just a short reminder, if you have questions to Antoine, please feel free and use the chat that you see in the panel and just put in your questions and we will answer them after presentations in the Q&A session. So I'm happy to introduce Jan now. Jan, I hope you're here. Jan Voskuil from Taxonic. Hi, Jan. Yes, we can hear you well. And yes, the floor is yours for SKOS in the public sector.
Thank you, Martin. My name is Jan Voskuil. I am co-founder and CEO of Taxonic, a consultancy focusing on linked data technologies and SKOS. Taxonic is also a certified solution partner for Pool Party. And today I will talk about developments around SKOS in the public sector in the Netherlands, more specifically about the fact that SKOS has recently made it into the Dutch Comply or Explain list, which effectively makes SKOS an obligatory standard for Dutch public sector organizations. The public sector is broadly viewed as an important source of linked open data. The UK presents a well-known case. More than 20,000 datasets are published at data.gov.uk, and most of these are available in linked data formats. Similar initiatives are taken by other national governments in Europe, at the EU level and abroad. The number will continue to grow in the future. Now, when we look at the role and uptake of SKOS within these developments, two somewhat paradoxical observations can be made. On the one hand, SKOS is playing an important role, and the number of SKOS vocabularies is growing. At the same time, however, the observation can be made that the uptake of SKOS is slower than one might expect. Now, one area where SKOS is often used is the world of content management. Many libraries make their thesauri available in SKOS. The Library of Congress, the British and French National Libraries, the Dutch National Library, the EU Publication Office, there are many, many examples. This use of SKOS aims at opening up large sets of content items, books, videos, articles. In short, the aim is to opening up libraries. Each content item is tagged with one or more index terms from a controlled list, which we call a thesaurus. The thesaurus is the list of all index terms. End users browse the topic tree or create queries in search of specific articles. By publishing the thesaurus using SKOS, the thesaurus becomes available as a service on the web for end users and for IT systems. A number of additional benefits are obtained. The index terms can be related to index terms in other thesauri, as we just saw. Secondly, if I wanted to publish articles, I could directly use a third-party SKOS thesaurus available on the web. Third, there is a growing body of technologies that use SKOS thesauri for automated tagging, entity extraction, big data analysis, and many more useful purposes that will become increasingly important in a networked world. Yet, we need to be aware that using SKOS for publishing thesauri in the context of context management is just one area of important use cases. In my experience, there are four distinct areas where the use of SKOS offers great benefits. First, SKOS can be used for publishing index terms for content in libraries, as discussed. Second, SKOS can be used to publish glossaries and concept dictionaries with the aim of describing the specific language or jargon used in an organization. Third, SKOS can be used to publish value lists and code lists, such as the list of country codes or currencies. The aim of this is to make the list readable to computer programs and applications. The fourth area where SKOS can play an important role is indexing modeling terms in large-scale data models. In larger enterprises, when you take all databases together, people deal with tens of thousands of entities and hundreds of thousands of attributes. Just as well as you can use SKOS to index content items in a library, you can use it to index such modeling terms and make them findable. In all four cases, I will use the word vocabulary to indicate the set of SKOS concepts. It is not possible to discuss these four areas in any depth within our current time frame. Let me just note that these four areas overlap to some extent and may coincide in specific cases. Yet, when you look at the typical vocabularies in each of these four areas, typical differences can be observed. Glossaries tend to have a limited number of terms, typically a few dozen or a few hundred, maybe 1,000, and only a limited number of hierarchical levels. Library thesauri, on the other hand, typically have up to tens of thousands of terms and a very elaborate hierarchy with many levels. Now, looking at a glossary and a library thesaurus, you may wonder, suppose I have a glossary and I publish it in SKOS. Wouldn't it be great if I can use the glossary concepts for tagging articles on my website? And the answer is, yes, of course you can. That is the power that SKOS gives you. Alternatively, they could exist separately alongside each other. Fortunately, SKOS offers a rich set of tools to interconnect your glossary and your library thesaurus. Antoine already talked about this a little bit. Concepts in the one can be hyperlinked to concepts in the other. This makes it possible to jump from a topic tag associated to an article to the definition in the glossary. So the real power of SKOS is that it enables you to interconnect vocabularies, even if they serve different purposes and have different structures. A similar line of argument applies to glossaries and value lists. Suppose your organization has a value list containing 20 category names, which are used over and over again in many different IT systems. Now, if you publish a value list in the form of a SKOS vocabulary, you achieve a number of benefits over publishing it as a list, publishing the list in a PDF document. The value list is maintained at a single central point and reused in many places. The concepts in a glossary can also be used as values in a value list. Each concept has a unique identifier in the form of a URI. The glossary and the value list are also identified by URIs, and they can share the same concepts. Now let us briefly discuss the Wolters Kluwer Deutschland labor law thesaurus, which shows how this works. The thesaurus is available on the web as a service in SKOS format, published using the Pool Party Thesaurus Manager. Many of the concepts contained in it are hyperlinked to similar concepts in other thesauri on the web. So if you look at the concept Unfallverhütung, accident prevention, you see the concepts preferred label, its URI, broader terms, narrower terms, and so on. When you scroll down, however, you see the definitions found elsewhere in other vocabularies that are also available, like DBpedia and Eurovoc. In short, publishing vocabularies such as glossaries, library thesauri, and value lists as a service on the web offers many benefits. Most importantly, the vocabularies can be combined and reused in many ways. Now, why is this so important for public sector organizations? The public sector continues to become more complex. The body of law and legislation grows. Governments operate more and more in an interconnected context. This not only generates huge amounts of data that are increasingly made available to the public. More importantly, it forms an increasingly complex fabric of laws, rules, institutions, and procedures that together shape the world we live in. Open government initiatives are trying hard to open up these structures to public scrutiny, because the constantly growing level of complexity of this fabric makes openness increasingly difficult to achieve. More complexity means less transparency and less action is taken. When large numbers of organizations would decide to publish their glossaries, library thesauri, and value lists in the form of SKOS vocabularies, this would greatly benefit the outside world. It would add to transparency, increase interoperability, and stimulate reuse. One should not forget, however, that it would also benefit these organizations themselves. It would enhance internal knowledge management processes, add control over IT projects, and add more insight in the data in IT systems. Also, it would create the basis for many innovations that are necessary to deal with future developments. So, how can we stimulate the uptake of SKOS in public sector organizations? In the Netherlands, we have a body called the Bureau Forum Standaardisatie. It maintains a list of open standards called the Comply or Explain list. Standards on the list are more or less obligatory for public sector organizations. The list is not very actively enforced, but nobody is eager to be mentioned as a non-complier. So, the list does have some effect. And this is especially the case when an organization wants to renew part of its IT landscape. In the resulting tender, compliance to obligatory standards is mandatory. With the support of some organizations, I have taken the initiative to propose SKOS as a member of the Comply or Explain list. Some 25 organizations took part in the process. The expert group was actually quite enthusiastic. And in May 2015, SKOS was officially announced as a mandatory standard in the Netherlands. The goal of making SKOS an obligatory standard is to stimulate its uptake. It is hoped that public sector organizations will become more aware of the benefits that SKOS offers. Also, it is hoped that its mandatory status will tip the balance in cases where the business can go both ways. In a situation where only a minority of organizations applies SKOS, adopting this standard means being an early adopter. For most public sector organizations, this is something they do not naturally do. Moreover, the greatest benefits of SKOS can be realized when there are a large number of SKOS vocabularies around. If almost everybody does it, the promises of a networked vocabulary can easily become a reality. However, if there are not so many of these SKOS vocabularies around, the networking argument is a difficult one to convince decision makers with. Now let me discuss a few examples that show that SKOS actually needs a bit of promotion. A good way to start is having a look at glossaries and dictionaries. At a very basic level, to start to understand what a particular public sector organization is doing, one needs to understand the jargon and specific technical terms that that organization uses in describing what it does in, say, annual reports and press releases, and let alone in data sets. Many organizations in the public sector realize this and publish glossaries and dictionaries. However, the standard way of doing this is still by publishing a list of words and their definitions in the form of a PDF file. An example of this is the dictionary that the Dutch Correctional Institutions Agency publishes on its website. The dictionary is the fundament underneath the annual report it publishes every year. It is a pity this glossary is published in the form of a PDF file and not in the form of a SKOS vocabulary. It means you cannot do all these cool things, such as relating other vocabularies to it, using it for text mining or big data analysis. Other organizations operating in the same domain, such as the police, sometimes use the very same terms with very different definitions. If you wanted to know what these organizations are doing, and you would try to read their publications, it would be convenient, to say the least, to have the definition of their jargon terms at your fingertips. And preferably, even literally so that the definition is presented on hovering the mouse pointer over a term. Now, fortunately, organizations in the public are starting to realize the importance of publishing their terminology using SKOS. A case in point is the Firebrary, which can be found at firebrary.nl. It contains several major terminology lists for the fire brigades and other organizations offering emergency services. In this area, services are often decentralized for maximum effectiveness, which makes sharing terminologies only the more important. One may hope that this example will find many followers in the future, especially now that SKOS has become an obligatory standard. As I have pointed out earlier, using SKOS to publish dictionaries and glossaries is just one area where SKOS is useful. Let me also present you some examples from two other areas, namely library thesauri and value lists. Although library thesauri are increasingly becoming available in SKOS vocabularies, as we discussed earlier, there are still many cases that remain to be SKOSified. A case in point is the WODC, the research department of the Dutch Ministry of Security and Justice. It has a large web library with scientific publications in the security and justice domain, and it maintains a library thesaurus for unlocking its content. The thesaurus contains almost 4,000 index terms, and you can download the thesaurus in the form, again, of a PDF file. Organizations that want to reuse that thesaurus in their CMS can obtain an XML file in a proprietary XML format. And as it happens, there are actually a number of such organizations, such as the Police Academy. So there is a lot to win with SKOS in the area of library thesauri. Now, let me now turn to value lists. An example that is of some importance in the Dutch sector is the list of activity codes for companies, which is known as the list of SBI codes. These codes represent activities that companies perform, creating software, selling cars, cultivation of food crops, and so on. Again, the Dutch Chamber of Commerce publishes this list in the form of a PDF file. The list actually reflects an EU standard, the so-called list of NACE codes. This latter list is actually available as a SKOS taxonomy. The codes perform a very important task. The codes of every registered company are known. Therefore, detailed statistical analyses can be made of which parts of the economy are performing how well or how bad. This is an obvious case of big data analysis, which is performed by government bodies at the national level, at the EU level, through organizations such as the IMF and the World Bank, even at the global level. So here you see how SKOS helps interpreting big data. Following the lead of the NACE code taxonomy and publishing the Dutch SBI list as a SKOS vocabulary would obviously lead to great benefits for all parties involved. Now, this more or less completes my contribution for today. Let me just summarize the three central takeaways. First, SKOS is useful for publishing vocabularies such as glossaries, library thesauri, and value lists as a service on the web. Public sector organizations can benefit greatly in doing so, both in terms of transparency and interoperability towards the outside world, as well as internally. The business case for SKOS is less easily made when you are an early adopter, which is something public sector organizations shrink away from. Therefore, it is hoped that making SKOS a mandatory standard in the Netherlands will stimulate its adoption. Now, this concludes my contribution. So, Martin, I give the word to you.
Thanks a lot, Jan. Thank you very much for this great presentation. And I think we have a very good basis now on SKOS, on controlled vocabularies, vocabularies as a service already. And I even hope that more and more countries in the European Union and above will follow this example of the Netherlands to have SKOS as a mandatory standard in government and e-government, because that's really a great approach. Before we go to use cases, two more announcements or remarks. So on the one hand side, you have in your panel also an area that is called handouts. There you already find the 3 PDFs, the presentations to download in PDF format that we have today, but we will also provide this afterwards. So we will give the slides to you and to all the participants afterwards also, and send you the links via email. The second remark is this webinar is recorded. You will also in the coming days have an information on that, so you can also share this recording, for example, with colleagues that are interested in the topic. All right, so coming to our last session that I will share together with Andreas, my colleague. So we have some use cases on top of SKOS. So what can we do now with these powerful system and knowledge organization system? So what we will see, I will introduce 2 areas of my work that is in the area of sustainable development, the climate tagger of REAP, and also a CTN Matchmaking Assistant. And then I will hand over to Andreas, who will give us 4 more use cases here, namely Health Direct Australia, Wolters Kluwer in the publishing area, Boehringer Ingelheim, that's pharmacy, and Adidas at the end. I think everybody knows in the room what Adidas is. So just let's go to the first one. We heard a lot about interoperability and open data and standards in the last half hour. And here's a very good example for vocabulary as a service. This vocabulary or this service is called Climate Tagger, as you see here, and you have the link climatetagger.net, and it is operated by the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership. That's an NGO that is located in Vienna International Center, and what it's all about is that it helps organization in the climate compatible development field to contextualize and to interconnect their contents. So what we see these days is climate and climate services is a topic that is really raising and coming up more and more. We all understand it. In the meantime, we also feel it and we see it, what the climate change is all about in our days. And so there are a lot of information sources popping up all around the globe that are dealing with climate compatible development. And this thesaurus can be used. It's a thesaurus, by the way, that is around 3,500 concepts in the area of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and mainly climate change development. And it's available in 5 languages, and it's fully available as open data. I mean, in principle, it's we can say it's available as linked open data because this thesaurus is also linked. As Jan pointed out, what is a big benefit of SKOS? It's linked with DPpedia, it's linked with a Gamut thesaurus, it's linked with AgroVoc, and I think it's also linked with a GPPN thesaurus, that is a thesaurus on building performance. So it's an interlinked thesaurus, and that helps also when you're using the climate tagger to also make use of sources that are then tagged with the other sources that I just mentioned. And what you can do here is you can fully for free register, you can get your API key of the climate tagger, and then you can push in content, documents, news articles, whatever knowledge objects you have, and you will get back the tags plus the URIs of these concepts that have been analyzed by the climate tagger, and then you can make use of it and build interesting applications on top of it, and you can interconnect it with all these other sources that are using the climate tagger already, and these sources are getting more and more every week, every month, because the climate tagger is really becoming something like a de facto standard in the area of climate compatible development. So the one thing you can do is automatic classification on top of this SKOS thesaurus that is in place. And the other thing that is also here available in the API and that is also very well used in the meantime is organizations or knowledge brokers, how it's called very often in this field, can also push information to the climate tagger, and this information is then analyzed. It's on top of the SKOS thesaurus classified, and then it's indexed into the so-called content pool. And in this content pool, then you have more and more information around the globe that is coming into it from in the area of climate change development, and then you can make use of this information. So if you are a source A and you would like to make use of information of source B, you can automatically then fetch this information to display, to show it on your own website, and thereby information is getting more and more contextualized and interconnected. And beneath Climate Tagger, there is Pool Party Semantic Suite as a technology, and if you're interested to learn more about that, then I would like to invite you. We have a webinar with the people from the Climate Tagger. This is REAP, but also with the Stockholm Environment Institute in Oxford that is using Climate Tagger, on the 5th of November at 3 p.m. Central European Time. And in the slides you can find here the link for more information for the agenda and also for registration. So that's the Climate Tagger, the first use case. The second use case I would like to introduce on top of SKOS is very interesting because it's connected with the first one. It doesn't make use of the climate tagger, but it makes use of the SKOS thesaurus that is in place and that has been developed by REAP, and it's the CTN Matchmaking Assistant. CTCN is the Climate Technology Center and Network of UN, and it's located in Copenhagen. And what happens here is that developing countries are pushing climate technology support requests to CTCN, so they can request support and technology support and consulting from CTCN partner network. There are around 70-80 partners in CTCN, and then CTCN makes a decision whom of the partners can foster or can support this request, so can give consultancy, can give help to these developing countries in specific areas and in specific topics or sectors. So here this controlled vocabulary is used to, on the one hand side, annotate all these technology assistant requests that are coming in by the developing countries, and we're building something, we call it a semantic footprint around these documents that are coming in. And then it's analyzed and it is internally then mapped with a big pool on the one hand side of documents that are from the network, so from the organizations that support such requests. And on top of this, we recalculate which of these organizations of partners of CTCN are the correct or the right ones to solve such a request or to support such a request. On top, we're doing this on sectors, so it's very important what sector is this request about. Is it about buildings performance or photovoltaic or other issues about change, climate change, about mitigation or adaptation, and so on and so forth. But it's also very important to analyze the region this request comes from, because climate change is very different, or the technologies and the mechanisms you need to solve problems are very different depending on the region where the problem occurs. So now the team of CTCN is supported by this matchmaking system and can now make much more better and precise decisions whom in the network they will invite to support such a request coming from a development country. And that's the second use case. And here I hand over for Andreas.
Yeah, thank you, Martin, for these two very interesting use cases. So my name is Andreas from the Semantic Web Company, and would like to introduce you to a couple of more use cases on top of SKOS and controlled vocabularies. So the first one is Health Direct Australia. I'd like to point to they have created a portal which is very valuable for the Australian citizen because as long as it hasn't been in place, people had to look around at several different information portals, the so-called trusted sources. More than 100 are available only for Australian citizens. So think about all the other countries. But in any case, at least for Australians, it's now much easier than ever before to collect information around any kind of disease or information on drugs and stuff like that. So how did it work, or how does it work? One of the core components in this information portal is the so-called Australian Health Thesaurus. The Australian Health Thesaurus is derived from the medical subject headings thesaurus, the MASH thesaurus. So it was somehow adapted to the needs of the Australian citizens. And after this work has been done, which by the way is an ongoing process, so it's constantly extended by content analytics. But in any case, as soon as this thesaurus was in place, all the different information sources and their metadata systems were mapped to this Australian Health Thesaurus. So you can imagine for political reasons, it's very hard to push a standard on top of all the 100 or over 100 information sources. It was rather feasible to map those existing standards, different standards, to this Australian Health Thesaurus. And the Australian Health Thesaurus now serves as the main source to categorize and index the incoming information sources. So for instance, if you go to this website, you will find not only a very nice desktop interface, also a nice mobile interface, by the way, and all the refiners, for instance, or the related searches and so on, are derived from the HT thesaurus. And this makes it, of course, for the user and from the user experience point of view, a very convenient way to gather information from all the different sources. By the way, a little side effect of this approach taken here, I think, is worth pointing at. If you take a look on the mobile interface, it's very obvious that Thesauri can also help to, let's say, improve the user experience, especially with mobile applications, because for instance, all these ways to drill down when you search for something, which are provided by means of controlled vocabularies in the back, will help to shorten the time and to find something. And that's especially when you have a mobile interface in place, a very important factor, I guess, for a good user experience. Another use case on top of SKOS, already mentioned by Jan Voskuil, I'd like to take a more detailed look on. There is, first of all, it's a good example how SKOS can be the starting point for large enterprises to create enterprise knowledge graphs. So I think that's a very important development we can see on the market, I would say, since the publication of Google Knowledge Graph. It became obvious that that's an approach which can be taken by virtually any organization to build the backbone of information architecture. But the question then is, of course, where to start from. So what are the sources? What are the standards? What's the approach which should be taken? And it turned out to be very complicated to start with something more complex than SKOS. So what we are saying is not that SKOS is the end of the whole story, but it's where it should begin. And if you look at the visualization of this knowledge graph, which was developed by Wolters Kluwer, Germany, it already displays, it's not limited to SKOS. So the broader, narrow, and related relations, here quite colorful, were enriched by additional properties, which means in that case, actually, various sources have been linked to each other by using this SKOS, thesaurus, plus the extension on top of that. So if you add to a SKOS tree or graph rather, additional custom schemes which can be derived from ontologies like schema.org or FIBO and so on, then you will constantly extend this graph around your SKOS backbone, and that's one of the approaches we would like to propagate or at least encourage people to consider when trying to develop an enterprise knowledge graph. The next use case on top of controlled vocabularies, which goes already also far beyond SKOS, is a data analytics dashboard, which is used by Boehringer Ingelheim. So this pharma company is, of course, doing a very professional management of their scientific publications, and they've ever done that. But what they've figured out is that with means of RDF technologies, it's possible to combine structured and unstructured data in a very nice way. So if you combine, for instance, the impact factor of a publication, which can be derived from probably rather structured data, with text analytics based on controlled vocabularies around your publications, you can calculate very interesting statistics around your publication activity. And if you visualize that maybe embedded in a nice semantic search environment, then we are very close to what people used to call a, let's say, business intelligence dashboard. So what you see here in front of you is an application, which is an application which is built simply on RDF and Sparkle. So there is nothing in between anymore. It's really standards-based approach. All the data gathered from different sources in that case was transformed into an RDF graph. Here, the controlled vocabulary based on SKOS plays a very essential role to normalize all the different incoming literals from different sources to bring them down to a URI. Of course, that's always the backbone of a knowledge graph. And later, with an appropriate Sparkle query, you can create the results to visualize them on a dashboard like that. And that's something which probably was able, of course, we were able to do something like that also with other technologies in former years. But also the question comes in, okay, how much does it cost? How much can it be scaled out? And what if I want to add additional sources? What if I want to introduce new categories? How agile is that approach? And that's exactly where I believe SKOS and RDF comes into play to help enterprises to create agile, data-driven applications. And last but not least, I'd like to point out to the fact that SKOS and other knowledge graphs are not only meant to be used by, let's say, typical knowledge management issues and problems. What we can see on the market is a strong uptake by marketing departments using RDF technologies. And what we believe in is that the graph-driven approach to improve the customer experience is a very powerful approach. So personalizing user experience with brands and products is a data-driven task. And that's what Adidas said just recently at Semantics conference in their, I would say, brilliant talk, where it was clearly displayed how a master data management or metadata management system in a large corporation like Adidas can be nicely built around SKOS and RDF schemas, other schemas, of course. It's not SKOS only, but SKOS again was the starting point to create such an environment. So to come to a conclusion, what we observe is that controlled vocabularies, and in particular SKOS, can cover quite a large range of application types. So if you think from the one hand side, okay, rather knowledge-driven tasks like a doctor would like to have a better integrated view on their patients, on the one hand side, in contrast to the web shopper who wants to have a better or nicer buying experience, you see there's a broad range of application types we can cover with this kind of technology. And that, to my opinion, is the very exciting thing about it. So we work with a lot of different industries, and it's always a little bit different, let's say, the approaches we have to take. But at the end, it always comes to the question how to model the information, how to model the data. And here, the graph-based approach seems to be a really promising approach in our days. Okay, so that was it. Please stay in the room if you want. We will now shut down the official part of our session. We will try to answer questions if there are any around, and if the questions, or as soon as the questions have been answered, we will also open the microphones to those who have stayed with us. So please connect with us if you like. Here are our contact addresses, and as Martin already said, we will also send out a follow-up email in which you find all the links and also the video of this webinar. Thanks again, and hope you enjoyed. Please stay with us if you're interested in a question answering session. Bye-bye.
Yes, Martin here again. So just post your questions into the chat, please. Even if it's, I think we have heard a lot of information starting from this overview from Antoine that was great, then going over humanities regarding Europeana to e-government and government applications by Jan, and then through sustainable development down to industry. So if you have any questions, no matter to whom from the panel, just place it into the chat, please. You have a very good chance now to get it answered.
So there is one question. Is there any kind of a hyperlink to more information on the reference Justice Thesaurus? Jan, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah, sure. I can add a hyperlink in the slides and make it available later. Maybe I can have a look at this.
Okay, in the meantime, there is another question. Is there support or examples of user feedback for the quality of the terms, e.g., people voting or public contributing their own terms from their point of view? Antoine, maybe I'd like to hand over this question to you. Is Europeana using a feedback system like that? I would be interested also.
We are not using really feedback systems right now, but we may explore this. And it's always a bit difficult to actually identify the suitable environment for doing so. So that may happen in specialized environment, a bit more specialized than ourselves, or we have a very general limit.
So what I can add in here is, at least from a technological perspective, we at Pool Party here are well prepared for this situation. There is a so-called wiki component, wiki frontend available for every controlled vocabulary being created within Pool Party. But I have to admit, it's not the most frequently asked feature yet. But I see a more and more interest in, let's say, more collaborative and crowdsourcing activities in the area of vocabulary management. Probably also interesting. It's not restricted just to public sector information. Also, enterprises, of course, more and more get the idea that other governance models around metadata can be useful than the ones we used to, let's say, roll out in the 80s or 90s of the last century.
I can add a few words, Martin speaking, how it is working on the climate tagger, for example, because there is a strong need, let's say, on expanding the thesaurus quickly, because the area of climate change is developing very quickly and very dynamic. Here also, it's not a really collaborative approach where people just can't put in concepts and new terms, but on the one hand side, the whole content pool is analyzed. So you find new terms that are popping up that were not in place before automatically, and these terms, these candidate terms, and others that come from partners that are using the climate tagger, and for example have a need for more specific information in a separate or a special area like wind energy, they get in touch with REAP, and then there is a governing board, or let's say a governance process, where then one person together with a team makes decisions what of these terms comes into and in what place it comes into the thesaurus. So it's a mixture of automatic and collaborative or user suggestions.
Thank you. So another question was, I'm wondering if you have worked with or have heard of tools that make use of multiple controlled vocabularies in one faceted navigation system. Perhaps where drilling down through one high-level vocabulary will allow the user to select concepts or a single concept from a more specific vocabulary that has been mapped into the hierarchy. That's a really advanced question. I mean, one thing which comes close to that is going back to this visualization here. Wolters Kluwer has, as already pointed out by Jan, quite a linked environment of vocabulary. So it's not just one single monolithic vocabulary. It's rather many vocabularies, and they are interlinked to each other. And one possibility which is offered then is you can see the contextualization of the very same concept in different ways. So for instance, let's say in the context of tax law, a certain concept has different kinds of relationships than it would have maybe in another context. And therefore, different SKOS vocabularies can be established and linked to each other. So the concept behind is always or remains the same, but in various subdomains, it's contextualized differently. Maybe that comes close to this question, but I hand over to the colleagues. Have you something similar experienced?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I answered a very similar question to the SKOS mailing list last week. That's very fresh in a way. I've been involved in a research project a long time ago that was doing alignment automatically between concept schemes and trying to show the results in facets. And we had one test indeed with some approach that was sort of allowing the user to drill down through one vocabulary and then at some point to continue having jumped to the other one using alignment between the two vocabularies. And actually, these tests were not so conclusive at the time because we used automatic alignment. Sometimes the jump felt a bit weird in a way because the vocabularies coming from different contexts, they can really be engineered. So it would probably need some sort of smoothening in order to make the combination of two vocabularies maybe something a bit more consistent. The fact is that technically it's really made trivial by the SKOS features, but it's the information content that probably needs to be curated a bit before such system is applied and offered to the users.
Irina, by the way, you are unmuted now. If you have a microphone and a way to talk with us, are you there, Irina? I think it was your question. That's why I'd like to bring you into this discussion. Irina, are you there? No. Okay, maybe she doesn't have a microphone installed, however. So the next question was, having SKOS as enforced law is a great success. Jan, that goes directly to you. What were the drivers of coming that far? How can other countries follow? Please share advice on stakeholder management. Jan, what can you say about that?
Yes, well, basically, I was somewhat surprised that most organizations had representatives that were actually quite enthusiastic about SKOS. It takes some, well, of course, it takes a lot of explaining what are the benefits. It's not very useful to focus on how the technology works. You really have to focus on the benefits, and in this case, the focus was very much on benefits for public sector organizations. So what does it mean for a public sector organization to publish dictionaries, for instance, using SKOS? And well, it's especially about finding real examples, like, well, for instance, the examples that I mentioned, that make people aware that there is something to win. And on the other hand, you have to find examples that are very close to, let's say, the worldview that you have when you work at a public sector organization. So one of the examples that worked very well, in my opinion, was the example of the Austrian Geological Survey, an organization that publishes also a large thesaurus. But what I do is actually take Inspire terms. You know, Inspire is a very important European standard for European countries to report facts about landscape, about soil, about, well, geology, essentially. And that is an example that shows how you can go from structured traditional worlds, XML, standards, stuff like that, and make those terms that are used in those standards understandable for people in the field. Now, that struck a chord, I think, and it's mainly, so my answer is essentially go for examples that make sense to governments and people. Oh, maybe another interesting one is the Wolters Kluwer case, because these, we've discussed this, these are thesauri explaining terms used in labor law and stuff like that, which is something that many organizations in the public sector work with. So then I start to see how useful this can be. Interlinking all these different vocabularies, that's basically the bottom line. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Well, from my perspective, yes. But let me see, we can also open up the microphone from the asking person. Not there anymore. Okay, there is another, and that's the last question we've collected. Also interesting. In the use of SKOS, have you found it has encouraged publishers to add more semantic information that wasn't documented previously, e.g., sources, authors, examples, and so on? Well, one quick question on that. Also have to add that the initiative or initiatives like we create a SKOS vocabulary, or we start to build a knowledge graph, we start to professionalize on our metadata management in general. In the very first project phase, always, or most nearly always, uncovers some problems with data quality in general. So it's always a matter of, let's say, a data quality or information quality management initiative also. So that's probably also a reason why a couple of organizations which already have figured out, okay, what would be the value, probably shy away a little bit from such projects, or at least some people in such organizations. So I think in general, as soon as you start to build a semantic layer on top of your assets, you will detect a lot of problems with your data quality. Anything you would like to add here from, I'm asking my colleagues, what are your experiences? I will also open up the microphone of Bharat. Bharat, it was your question. Are you still there? Are you still there, Bharat? Any of the panelists would like to add something on what I've said?
I can say something about this. Data quality is always an issue, and most of the problems with data quality stem from combining data from different sources. So you've got all these data sets, and if you don't have a methodological approach to the mapping problem, then there's always something that's mapped in the wrong way. So, and here I think that using Thesauri can be really of help, because, well, as you explained, Andreas, you start with a very simple structure, and you can add more and more properties to it. And then in the end, you will have a very powerful backbone to map all your different models to, and that improves interoperability. Is very good for data quality.
Excellent answer. Thanks, Jan. Yeah, so I think we are now in the very last round. There are no other questions in the dashboard, so I will now stop the recording, by the way. So thanks again for all who listened on YouTube and so on.